No, not a bird. It had definitely sounded like some kind of musical instrument. A guitar. Or something with strings anyway. He heard it again, and this time he was sure. Not really a tune, but a whole bunch of notes all blurring together as if someone was running a finger over the strings of whatever it was. The music was becoming deeper and deeper in the woods. If I got up higher, maybe I could see. Brian climbed quickly. He got up more than halfway up the tree. The branches weren't nearly as broad up here. Holding onto a branch over his head, he scooted sideways out onto a limb, trying to find a clear sight through the trees. He focused hard on the music. It wasn't so faint. It was so faint that at times he could barely hear it, though. It would just get a tiny bit louder at the times. Those moments you thought he could almost recognize the tune. The ABC song? Or maybe Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Wait, could be Baa Baa Black Sheep. Never noticed before, but they all sound the same tune. Brian was listening so hard he didn't notice he was leaning toward the sound. Bit by imperceptible bit, his feet shifted. The branch began to sag under Brian's weight. With each tiny movement he made, it bent a little more forward. Brian was now singing softly, trying to fit the words into the tune. H-I-J-K-L-M-N-O. Yikes! The bent bough snapped. Brian fell, with twigs scratching him and leaves whipping into his eyes. He prayed that he would break an arm or a leg, not his neck. He landed, rolled, and sat in astonishment. No crack of broken bones. No pain at all, in fact. Just Dougie's warm breath and wet tongue greeting him. Brian had fallen into a large soft mound of dirt and leaf mold. Beside the pile was a big hole. Dougie had done his thing again. Francis was finally proficient at Twinkle Twinkle. He could even throw in a decent glissando or two. The sisters were now trying to satisfy the musical standards of the spell. Okay, so we got to soothe a savage beast, soften rocks, or bend a knotted oak, Emma said, quoting the parchment. Do you think we have to do all three, or just one of them? It says or, Emma pointed out. We should probably try to do all of them. Just to be safe, Francis agreed. There were a lot of squirrels in the woods, and many birds, too. Emma had even seen a deer a couple times and a raccoon at the stream one evening. I don't think you'd call any of those savage, she said. Are there bears? Francis asked. Bears will definitely count as savage. I've never heard of bears out here, Emma said. Besides, there's no way in this lifetime I'm going to hold you while you try to soothe a rampaging bear by playing Twinkle Twinkle. Minnows, Francis proposed. I've seen lots of minnows in the stream. Maybe some of them are baby piranhas. Do you think potentially savage beasts could count? Emma wasn't sure if potential counted, as she was even less sure that the minnows were piranhas. They tried anyway. Emma threw a handful of crumbs in the water. Bread, cheese, and fruit appeared nightly in the cave for her. Nourishing and tasty, albeit monotonous, to draw the minnows close. Francis plucked away, but the minnows continued their usual darting and twitching and did not seem the least bit soothed. Sisters then decided that in the interest of safety, attempts to soothe any other beast should be the last on their list. They tried rock softening next. You know how if you really sing a really high note, you can shatter glass? Francis said hopefully. Maybe it works like that. Emma fetched rocks of assorted sizes and types and lined them all up next to the harp. Frances played her heart out. Nothing happened. The rocks were utterly unperturbed by Twinkle Twinkle, with or without glissandos. After a few fruitless hours, Emma swept the rocks away and replaced them with a variety of sticks near by oak tree. Together, the sisters went through several dozen more repetitions of the song. Anything? Frances panted, her throat swelling. Emma set Frances back down on the rock. She picked up a stick and examined it closely. Maybe, she said slowly. I'm not sure. It could be a tiny bit more bent than it was before. Let's keep going just a little bit longer. It's no use, Frances said at last, in both exhaustion and despair. She hopped into the stream to refresh herself. Emma flung the stick she was holding. As she walked back to the cave, she felt the resolve crumbling. There was no way harp music could soften a rock or bend a piece of wood. Did that mean, would they be stuck here forever? And poor Frances, would she be a frog the rest of her life? In the distance, Brian could see the girl with her back to him, and she was standing next to the stream playing a harp. All he could really see was that she had dark curly hair. Since he had first heard the music, Brian spent a lot of time in the woods trying to trace the source. With Dougie at his side, he had tramped over what seemed like every inch of the woods, but he hadn't heard the music again all summer. Instead, he heard other things, birdsong, rain pattering on the leaves, the sigh of the wind in the upper branches, the rustles and buzzes of hundreds of tiny creatures going about their lives, the near silence that was full of life. He'd heard the real music of the woods, and he liked it so much he stopped feeling compelled to find out other music. Now when he wasn't looking for it, here it was again. The girl was downstream from him and on the far side. Brian stayed put. He felt that if he moved closer or tried to call her out to her, she would simply disappear. It didn't feel like a silly thought. Maybe it was his imagination, but there was definitely something. It seemed to be something weird and otherworldly in the air. Weird, but not scary. Brian eased himself down into a rock. It was rough surfaced and uneven, not the most comfortable seat. Dougie sat beside him, and Brian curled his fingers into the soft fur of the dog's nape. Brian was a musician himself, where he might have noticed the girl was in the wrong position to play harp, facing the harp strings rather than astride than its frame. And he was too far away to see that she wasn't actually even touching the strings. Maybe he could play the music, the ABC song, or maybe Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, as he never heard it before. It was as if the harp and the streams were playing together, plinks and splashes, ripples and waves, water and notes in perfect counterpoint. Harp music, stream music, woods music. They all came together, and Brian found himself thinking of Gramps and his dad and then his mom. And soon tears were sliding down his cheeks, and Dougie was nudging closer to comfort him. Brian had no idea how long he sat there crying quietly, oblivious to the cold, hard rock beneath him. The harp music ended. Still in a daze, he didn't notice that when the girl disappeared among the trees, nor did he notice a tiny plop of a frog diving into the stream. Brian hugged Dougie, stood up, and then took one last look at the harp. So it's true, he thought. It's really true. Woods music. Come on, Dougie, he said loud. Time to go home. The next morning, Emma woke in this cave to find Frances still asleep next to her. Frances the person, not Frances the frog. Emma whooped and woke her sister, who in her daze first dazed and confused moments, hopped on all fours several times before readjusting to her 2 feet. We did it! We did it! But how? Frances said, even as she hugged her sister in excitement. We didn't soften the rocks or bend any of that wood or soothe the savage beast either. I don't get it. Emma grabbed the parchment which they all kept rolled up on a rock. Where does it say? Oh, right here. Music to soothe the savage breast. She shouted, not beast. We read it wrong. Frances was still puzzled. So we soothed someone's breast? Emma rolled her eyes but was too excited to bicker. I'm sure it means like their heart, their feelings, Then she frowned, but you're right. Who? The boy, Frances exclaimed. What boy? Last night when I hopped in the stream, out of the stream, I saw a boy. He was sitting on a rock crying, and I was just about to come get you, but then he went away. He was crying. Doesn't seem like the music soothed him, Emma said doubtfully. No, it was him all right, Frances was sure of it. A good cry can be very soothing. She herself had experienced a good number of prolonged crying sessions, usually the result of particularly fierce bickers, and always felt much better afterwards. Emma looked at her sister with new respect. It was really you, she said. You did the hard part. Frances blushed in pleasure and surprise. But I could never have done it without you, she said. Indeed, said a voice from outside the cave entrance. And don't feel too bad about your mistake with Congreve. Lots of folks did the same. It's one of the most misquoted lines in English literature. Together the girls ran outside, but they were too late. All I saw was a last whirl of bright green cape disappearing into the thin air. The house is too big for me on my own anyway, Gramps said. It'll be good to be all together, Dad said. A bachelor pad. He smiled and clapped Brian on the back. Brian could hardly believe his ears. They're moving out of the city and in with Gramps.